Professor Kaelrin stood frozen, staring at the images on the display. His 3 centuries of experience had not prepared him for this moment. Around the lecture hall, students erupted into chaos. Some shouted questions at Jiho. Others argued among themselves. A few sat in stunned silence. Duvan's rocky fist slammed on his desk. This is a prank. It has to be. The human is playing a joke on us. Look at the evidence, Mira said, her voice sharp. She pointed at the screen where Jiho's Earth records glowed beside the ancient tablets. Those are official museum records. The dates match. The symbols match exactly. Then the museum is wrong, Duvan shot back. Or the carbon dating is wrong. Something is wrong because humans are new to space. Everyone knows this. Iris flew up from her seat, her feathers bright red with agitation. But what if it is true? What if humans really were here before all of us? Professor Kaelrin finally found his voice. Silence. All of you, silence. The room quieted, though students still whispered to each other. The professor turned to Jiho. You must understand how extraordinary this claim is. You are suggesting that human civilization predates every known spacefaring species in the galaxy. That is not just unlikely. It contradicts everything we know about galactic history. I know, Professor, Jiho said. He felt exhausted. He had hoped he was wrong. He had spent 3 weeks checking and rechecking Earth's records, praying he had made a mistake. But the evidence was clear. I did not want to believe it either. But look at the tablets. Look at the symbols. This is English, Professor. This is Korean. These are Earth languages from our ancient period. He pointed at different symbols on the nearest tablet. This symbol here, it is the letter E. This one is L. This sequence spells Earth. And these numbers here, they are dates written in our old calendar system. Thal stood up, his expression skeptical. Even if you can read the symbols, that does not prove they are 10,000 years old. Perhaps they are recent forgeries. Perhaps someone from Earth made them and placed them on that dead world. Why would we do that? Jiho asked. We only discovered faster-than-light travel 3 years ago. We have been too busy making first contact and joining the galactic community. Who would have time to fly to a dead world and carve fake ancient tablets? Then explain it, Duvan demanded. If your people were here 10,000 years ago, where did they go? Why did they stop? What happened to them? Jiho took a deep breath. They fell. Our civilization collapsed. We lost everything. The room went quiet again. This time the silence felt heavy, oppressive. Professor Kaelrin moved closer to the display, examining the Earth records with his large black eyes. Show me more. Show me everything you have found. Jiho expanded his files. More images filled the holographic display. Ancient Earth spacecraft designs, colonial manifests, star charts from humanity's first expansion period. The data was fragmentary, pieced together from archaeological digs on Earth and recovered data from old computer systems that had survived millennia. This is our history, Professor, or at least the parts we have recovered. About 12,000 years ago, Earth achieved faster-than-light travel, not the same method we use now. We lost that technology. The old method used nuclear pulse propulsion, refined and improved over decades. It was slower than modern FTL drives, but it worked. He brought up a map showing Earth's position in dotted lines extending outward. Humanity spread across 300 light-years of space. We established 47 colony worlds. New Hansung was one of them. That is the world you know as Sector 7G, Professor. We called it New Hansung. It was supposed to be a paradise. Mira leaned forward, her silver face reflecting the glow of the display. What happened to it? What happened to all of them? Jiho said quietly. We expanded too fast, too far. Earth's government tried to control too much territory with too few resources. Supply lines broke down. The colonies became independent, then fought among themselves. Some tried to return to Earth but found the homeworld in civil war. Communication stopped. Technology was lost. Within 3 generations, most colonies had failed. He showed them images of ruins on Earth, ancient cities buried under soil and time. Earth itself fell into a dark age that lasted 8,000 years. We forgot how to build starships. We forgot we had ever left our world. The colonies became myths, then legends, then forgotten completely. Only in the last 200 years have we started finding evidence of our first civilization. Professor Kaelrin's forearms trembled slightly. This is beyond anything I could have imagined. If this is true, and I am beginning to believe it might be, then we must contact the Institute's archaeology department immediately. We must verify everything. I agree, Jiho said. I want to be wrong, Professor. I want there to be another explanation. But I have checked the records 100 times. The professor turned to address the class. This session is over. I need time to process this information and consult with colleagues. You are all sworn to secrecy until we can verify these claims. If word of this spreads before we have confirmation, it will cause panic and confusion. The students filed out slowly, most of them still arguing in hushed voices. Mira and Thal approached Jiho before leaving. Mira spoke first. If this is real, if humans really were here before us, then everything we know about galactic history is wrong. I know, Jiho said. It also means something terrible happened to your people, Thal added. Something bad enough to erase your entire civilization from the stars. Are you not frightened that it might happen again? Jiho had no answer for that. He was terrified. Over the next 3 days, Professor Kellerin assembled a team of experts. Archaeologists, historians, linguists, and dating specialists examined Jiho's evidence. They contacted Earth's academic institutions and requested access to their historical archives. They ran new tests on the tablets. Jiho attended every meeting. He watched as skeptical scientists became confused scientists, then shocked scientists. The evidence was overwhelming. The tablets were genuinely 10,000 years old. The symbols matched Earth languages exactly. The locations mentioned in the tablets corresponded to known colony sites from humanity's ancient records. On the 4th day, Professor Kellerin called an emergency faculty meeting. Jiho sat in the back of the conference room while professors and department heads argued about the implications. Some wanted to go public immediately, others insisted on more verification. A few suggested burying the information entirely. We cannot hide this, Professor Kellerin said firmly. This discovery rewrites galactic history. Every species in the galactic community believes they know the timeline of spacefaring civilizations. They are all wrong. Humans came first and then they vanished. We need to understand why. An elderly Velteran professor named Soral stood up. I have reviewed the Earth archives. There are gaps in their records. Large sections of their ancient history remain undiscovered. But I found something disturbing. References to something they called the Silence. It appears in multiple fragments, always associated with the collapse. The room went quiet. Jiho felt cold sweat on his back. He had seen those references too, but had hoped no one else would notice. What is the Silence? Professor Kellerin asked. The records are incomplete, Soral said, but it seems to be related to first contact. Not contact with another species, but contact with something else. Something that ended humanity's expansion. Duvan had been allowed to attend the meeting as the top student in the xenolinguistics program. He spoke up now. If humans encountered something hostile, something dangerous enough to destroy their civilization, should we not be concerned? What if it is still out there? That is precisely why we must investigate further, Professor Kellerin said. He turned to Jiho. Young human, I know this is difficult for you, but we need to know more. We need to visit the other colony sites. We need to find out what really happened to your people. Jiho nodded slowly. I understand, Professor. I want to know the truth too. Then we will organize an expedition, the professor announced. A small research team. We will visit the colony worlds and search for more evidence. Perhaps we will find answers. Perhaps we will find only more questions. But we must try. As the meeting concluded, Mira found Jiho in the hallway outside. Are you all right? This must be overwhelming for you. I keep thinking about all those people, Jiho said. Millions of humans living on dozens of worlds. They had families, dreams, futures. And then it all ended. Something took it away from them. My ancestors survived only because Earth fell so far that we became invisible. We survived by forgetting. Mira placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. Perhaps now you survive by remembering. Your people have a second chance. Make sure you do not repeat the mistakes of the past. The research vessel was called the Pathfinder, a mid-sized exploration ship with enough room for a crew of 8 and equipment for archaeological surveys. It departed from the Institute 3 weeks after the discovery was verified. News of the ancient human tablets had spread through academic circles, though the general public remained unaware. The galactic community's leadership wanted more information before making any announcements. Jiho stood in the ship's common area, watching Velthara Prime shrink behind them through the viewport. He felt a mixture of excitement and dread. Professor Kellerin had assembled a small team for the expedition. Besides Jiho himself, there was Mira from his xenolinguistics class, her brother Thal, who specialized in archaeological dating techniques, Duvan, whose knowledge of ancient territorial markers proved valuable, and 3 others. Hieri was the second human on the team. She had arrived from Earth 2 weeks ago, a specialist in Earth's ancient history and the Museum of Lost Colonies' lead archaeologist. She was older than Jiho, maybe 40, with gray streaks in her black hair and tired eyes that had seen too many ruins. She barely spoke during the journey, spending most of her time reviewing data about humanity's lost colonies. The pilot was a Veltheran named Rin, young and confident, who kept the ship running smoothly. The final member was Professor Kaelrin himself, who refused to let anyone else lead such an important expedition. Their first destination was a world humanity had called New Sol. The galactic communities, current charts listed it as uninhabited and unexplored. The journey took 4 days using modern FTL drives, far faster than the ancient human ships could have managed. As they entered orbit, Rin brought up surface scans. I am detecting ruins. Multiple sites spread across 3 continents. Some structures are still partially standing. Take us down near the largest concentration, Professor Kaelrin ordered. We will start there. The landing site was in what had once been a city. Now it was just foundations and collapsed walls, buried under 12,000 years of vegetation. The planet's atmosphere was breathable, though thinner than Earth standard. The team suited up and stepped out onto red soil. Hieri knelt and touched the ground. Her hand trembled. My ancestors walked here. They built homes here, raised children here, and then it all ended. Jiho understood her emotion. He felt it too. A connection to people he had never known, a loss he had never experienced but somehow inherited. They spent 3 days mapping the ruins. Mira and Thal worked on dating the structures, confirming they matched the time frame of humanity's first expansion. Duvan found more tablets, similar to the ones Professor Kaelrin had studied. Jiho and Hieri translated them. They were mundane records mostly, lists of supplies, population counts, resource surveys, the everyday documentation of a living colony. But on the 4th day they found something different. A building that had been sealed, its entrance buried deliberately. The team carefully excavated the doorway and broke through the seal. Inside they found computers, ancient but preserved in the dry atmosphere. Hieri connected portable power cells to the systems. It took hours of careful work, but finally, several terminals flickered to life. The data was corrupted in places, but much remained intact. These are personal logs, Hieri said, scrolling through files. People wrote about their daily lives. Listen to this one. It is from a woman named Park Minji, dated about 11,000 years ago. She read aloud. Supply ship is 3 months late. Council says not to worry, just a delay. But I hear rumors. Other colonies are going silent. Messages from Earth stopped last year. My daughter asks when Grandma will visit from the homeworld. I do not know what to tell her. The team stood in silence. The log continued with more entries, each one darker than the last. Food shortages, civil unrest, failed crops, disease. The final entry was short. We tried. God forgive us, we tried. To whoever finds this, learn from our mistakes. The stars are beautiful, but so very cold. They found similar records in other buildings. Thousands of personal stories, all ending in failure and loss. Some colonies lasted longer than others. Some fell to war, others to starvation or disease. A few simply gave up and died quietly. On the 5th world they visited, a planet humanity had called New Busan, they discovered something that changed everything. This colony had been different. The ruins showed evidence of military fortifications, weapon emplacements, and defensive structures. Something had attacked this place. Thal examined scorch marks on stone walls. These are not from conventional weapons. The heat signature is wrong. The pattern is wrong. This is technology I do not recognize. It might be human technology that was lost, Duvan suggested. Something they developed and then forgot. But Hieri shook her head. She was examining similar marks on a fallen building. No, these defensive positions are facing outward. New Busan was defending against something external, something that came from beyond the colony. They found a military command center partially intact. Inside, the computers were more heavily shielded and better preserved. Hieri worked for 2 days straight to access them, barely sleeping, driven by a need to know what had happened. When she finally broke through the encryption, what they found made her cry. Military logs, battle reports, desperate messages. Professor Kalerin gathered the team to hear them. The first report is from Colonel Yundaiho, dated 11,200 years ago, Yeri said, her voice shaking. He writes, "Contact lost with colonies Epsilon and Theta. Last transmission mentioned unknown vessels approaching. No identification. No response to hails. Then silence." She continued reading through months of reports. More colonies going dark. Human ships sent to investigate that never returned. Sightings of strange vessels that did not match any known design. And then attacks. "Here," Yeri said. "This is from Admiral Lee Sora." She writes, "They do not communicate. They do not warn. They do not take prisoners. Our weapons barely scratch them. We call them the Silence because that is all they leave behind. Silence. Empty colonies. Dead worlds. We are losing," the reports continued. Humanity fought a desperate war against an enemy they did not understand. They won a few battles but lost the war. Colony after colony fell. The military records showed Earth's fleets retreating, falling back toward the homeworld. The final military log was from someone named Admiral Park Minho. His words were chilling. "Earth Council has ordered full withdrawal. All colonies are to be abandoned. All FTL beacons are to be destroyed. All star charts are to be erased. We are going dark. If the Silence hunts by following our signals, by tracking our communications, then we must become invisible. We will retreat to Earth, destroy our own technology, and pray they lose interest. To whoever finds this record, if you are human, be cautious returning to the stars. If you are another species, you have built your civilization in the graveyard of ours. We drew their attention. Pray you do not do the same." The team sat in stunned silence after hearing the message. Professor Kalerin's forearms hung limply at his sides. Mira had tears running down her silver cheeks. Even Duvan looked shaken, his rocky face somehow expressing horror. "They deliberately destroyed their own civilization," Thal whispered. "They erased themselves from history to survive. And it worked," Jiho said quietly. "Earth fell into darkness. We forgot everything. For 8,000 years we lived in isolation. Whatever the Silence was, they must have left after finding nothing but a primitive world. And when we finally rebuilt and returned to space, they were gone." Rin, who had been silent throughout the reading, spoke up. "But where did they go? Are they still out there?" The Admiral said humanity drew their attention. What if the current galactic civilization draws them back? No one had an answer. They packed up the data and returned to the Pathfinder. As they prepared to leave New Busan's orbit, Hieri asked Professor Kalerin a question that had been bothering her. "Professor, when did the current spacefaring civilizations emerge? When did the Veltherans achieve FTL? The Croxians? All the others?" Professor Kalerin accessed his datapad. "The oldest current civilization is the Veltheran people. We achieved spaceflight 4,100 years ago. The Croxians came next about 3,800 years ago. Most species achieved FTL within the last 4,000 years." "Exactly," Yeri said. "Think about it. Humanity's civilization collapsed between 11 and 12,000 years ago. For 7 or 8,000 years, the galaxy was apparently empty. No spacefaring species at all. Then suddenly, multiple civilizations all emerge within a few thousand years of each other. Does that not seem strange?" Mira understood immediately. "You think the Silence prevented other species from developing? You think they kept the galaxy empty?" "I think," Yeri said carefully, "that whatever the Silence is, it left when it finished with humanity. And once it left, other species were free to evolve and expand. We all emerged in the shadow of humanity's destruction. The implications were terrifying. If true, it meant the current galactic civilization existed only because humanity had sacrificed itself. The Silence had consumed human space and then departed, leaving room for others to grow. But it also raised a darker question. What if the Silence returned? The team visited 3 more colony worlds over the following weeks. Each told the same story with minor variations. Humanity had spread too far, too fast, and then encountered something that ended their expansion. The ruins showed evidence of thriving communities that suddenly went silent. Some colonies had lasted longer than others, but all eventually fell. On the 8th world, a place humanity had called New Incheon, they found something that changed everything. The planet's surface scans showed the usual ruins, but there was an anomaly. Deep underground, something was generating a faint power signature, After 12,000 years, something was still running. Rin landed the Pathfinder near the signal source. The team stood in what had once been a military complex, now just broken walls and collapsed buildings. But the scans were clear. 20 meters down, something waited. We need to excavate carefully, Thal said. Whatever is down there has survived for millennia. We do not want to damage it. They set up drilling equipment and started working. It took 2 full days to reach the structure. When they finally broke through, they found a sealed vault. The entrance was marked with warnings in multiple languages. Jiho and Hyeri translated them together. Warning: sealed by order of the Earth Council. Do not open without proper authorization. Class 7 security clearance required. Contains sensitive military data regarding Project Silence Protocol. And below that, in larger letters, remember what we faced. Professor Kelrin looked at the team. We should not open this. We should contact the Galactic Council first. This clearly contains classified military information. From a civilization that fell 12,000 years ago, Duvan pointed out. Whatever secrets are inside, they cannot be classified anymore. Everyone is dead. Yeri stepped forward and placed her hand on the vault door. My people sealed this. My people left these warnings, but they also left this information for someone to find. Maybe they hoped humanity would recover and find it. Maybe they hoped someone else would learn from our mistakes. Either way, we need to know what is inside. After a long moment, Professor Kelrin nodded. Very well, but we proceed with extreme caution. The vault door was designed to last. It took Thal 3 hours to bypass the locking mechanisms without damaging anything. When the door finally opened, stale air rushed out unchanged for 12 millennia. Inside, the vault was small, just a single room lined with sealed storage containers and several computer terminals built into the walls. Emergency power cells activated when they entered, dim lights flickering to life. The computers began booting up automatically, ancient systems coming online one by one. Text appeared on screens written in English and Korean. If you are reading this, humanity either survived long enough to return, or another species has discovered our fate. Either way, you deserve the truth. Hyeri connected her portable computer to the terminal, carefully downloading the data. The files were massive, thousands of hours of video logs, battle reports, scientific analysis, and one final message marked as critical priority. Play the message, Jiho said quietly. The screen flickered, and a man's face appeared. He looked tired, old beyond his years, wearing a military uniform. Text identified him as Admiral Park Min-ho, commander of the Earth Defense Fleet, recorded 11,247 years ago. My name is Park Min-ho, the recording began. If you are watching this, then New Inchen's vault survived when everything else failed. Good. That means you have a chance to understand what happened to us, to learn from our mistakes, to maybe survive what we did not. The Admiral paused, rubbing his eyes. He looked like he had not slept in days. Humanity achieved faster than light travel 2,000 years before this recording. We were alone in the galaxy. We found no other intelligent life, no ruins, no signs anyone else had ever reached the stars. So we expanded, 47 colonies across 300 light years. We thought we were masters of space. We were fools. The Admiral touched controls off-screen and the video changed. It showed Starfield footage, then zoomed in on something strange. Ships, if you could call them that. They looked organic, alive, flowing through space like living things. They had no clear structure, no obvious engines or weapons. They just existed, moving with purpose. We first encountered them at Colony Epsilon. Admiral Park continued. The colony reported strange vessels approaching. No response to communications. No identification signals. The ships just appeared in orbit and began descending. We sent military vessels to investigate. Those ships never reported back. 3 days later, Epsilon went silent. Every man, woman, and child gone. More footage played, human warships firing weapons at the strange vessels. The weapons had no effect. The organic ships flowed around the blasts like water. Then they touched the human vessels and something happened. The ships stopped moving, went dark, silent. We could not hurt them, the Admiral said. Our best weapons, our strongest shields, nothing worked. They did not attack with lasers or missiles. They attacked with something else. Something we did not understand. They touched our ships and our people stopped. They did not die. They just stopped. Stopped moving, stopped thinking, stopped being. Living bodies with no minds left inside them. The team watched in horror as the footage continued. Colony after colony falling, human fleets retreating, the organic ships following, always following, never stopping. We called them the Silence because that is what they brought. Perfect, complete silence. No screams, no fighting, no last words. Just silence. We fought for 200 years. We lost more than half our colonies. Earth itself was threatened. The Council made the decision. A terrible decision, but the only one left. The Admiral's face returned to the screen. He looked directly at the camera, directly at them across 12,000 years. We realized something. The Silence followed our communications. They tracked our FTL signals. Every time we used our jump drives, every time we broadcast messages between stars, we left a trail. And they followed those trails. So we decided to erase the trails. Erase ourselves, he explained the plan. Earth's remaining colonies were evacuated. Their populations brought back to the homeworld. All FTL beacons were destroyed. All communication satellites were shut down. Star charts were deleted. And then the hardest part, Earth destroyed its own technology. We built nuclear weapons and buried them in our shipyards, our research facilities, our computer centers. Everything that could build a starship, everything that could reach out to the stars, we destroyed. We regressed ourselves deliberately. It took 1 generation to lose spaceflight, 3 generations to lose most technology, 5 generations to fall into a dark age. But it worked. The Admiral pulled up more footage, the organic ships circling Earth waiting. But as humanity went dark, as the signal stopped, as Earth became just another primitive world, the Silence lost interest. Over centuries they drifted away, searching for other signals to follow. Eventually they left. If you are human watching this, then our sacrifice worked. You survived. You rebuilt. You returned to the stars. I hope you have learned to be more careful this time. If you are another species, then you have inherited a dangerous galaxy. The Silence may be gone. They may be sleeping. Or they may be waiting for the next civilization to make too much noise. Admiral Park leaned forward, his expression intense. I have included all our research on the Silence in these files. Everything we learned about them, which is not much. They are not biological. They are not mechanical. They are something else, something we never understood. They exist in the space between, in the quantum foam, in the gaps of reality. They feed on consciousness, on thought, on minds. Our scientists believed they were attracted to complex information patterns. That is why they followed FTL signals and communication networks. That is why they left when Earth went silent. He pulled up a star chart. Red zones marked dozens of systems. These are the areas where we encountered the Silence, where our ships vanished, where colonies died. If you value your lives, avoid these zones. Do not go there. Do not investigate. Just stay away. The Admiral stood up, straightened his uniform. One final thing. We sealed other vaults like this one on 7 colony worlds. If New Inchan's vault survived, perhaps others did too. Find them. Learn everything you can. Because if the Silence returns, you will need every advantage to survive. We failed. Maybe you can succeed where we did not. The message ended. Admiral Park's face faded to black. The vault fell silent except for the quiet hum of ancient computers. Yeri was crying openly now. Jiho felt tears on his own cheeks. Even the alien members of the team looked shaken. Professor Kaleran's forearms trembled. Download everything, the professor said quietly. Every file, every bit of data. We need to get this information to the Galactic Council immediately. As Hieri worked on copying the files, Duvan examined the star chart the Admiral had shown. These red zones. These places where humanity encountered the Silence. I recognize some of these coordinates. These are current colony worlds. Species from the galactic community have settled in these systems. Mira looked at the map. That cannot be coincidence. Why would the current civilizations settle in the exact places where the Silence was encountered? Because those are good systems, Thal said. Habitable planets, stable stars, useful resources. Humanity chose them for the same reasons we did. But G the Pathfinder raced back toward Velthara Prime at maximum speed. Professor Kelrin had sent emergency messages ahead, marked with the highest priority codes. By the time they arrived, the Galactic Council had already convened an emergency session. Representatives from 40 different species gathered in the Great Hall, a massive space station that orbited the Council's neutral world. Jiho had never been to the Council chambers before. The hall was enormous, with seating arranged in circular tiers. Each species had their own section, designed to accommodate different biologies. The Veltharans sat in their silver seats. The Croxians occupied reinforced platforms. The small Pelthians had perches near the ceiling. Dozens of species Jiho could not name filled the other sections. At the center, on a raised platform, stood the council leadership. They looked concerned. Word of the discovery had spread through government channels, though the public still knew nothing. Now the team would present their findings to the entire assembled council. Professor Kaelrin went first, explaining the ancient tablets, the colony worlds, and humanity's lost civilization. He showed images of ruins, translated texts, and evidence of the collapse. The council listened in stunned silence. Some representatives shifted uncomfortably. Others whispered to aides. A few looked angry. Then Hieri stepped forward and played Admiral Park's message. The entire hall watched the recording. When it ended, chaos erupted. Species argued with each other. Some called the evidence fake. Others demanded immediate action. A few wanted to quarantine humanity completely. The council leader, an ancient Veltharan named Elder Soren, raised all four arms for silence. His voice boomed through the chamber. Order, we will have order. The noise gradually subsided. The evidence has been verified by our best scientists. The tablets are genuine. The data is real. Humanity was here first, and they fell to something we do not understand, something that may still exist. A Croxian representative stood, his massive form towering over his seat. Why should we trust humans? They hid this history from us. They knew about the silence and said nothing when they joined our community. Jiho felt anger rising, but Hieri spoke before he could. We hid nothing. We did not know. Our own history was lost to us. We spent 8,000 years in darkness, forgetting everything. We only started recovering fragments of our ancient past in the last century. Even now, most of Earth does not know the full truth. That is not good enough, the Croxian said. You brought danger to the galaxy once before. What if you bring it again? We did not bring the silence, Jiho said, his voice louder than he intended. We discovered it. There is a difference. And we paid for that discovery with our entire civilization. Billions of lives lost, thousands of years of darkness. We paid the price so maybe you would not have to. Another representative stood, a Pelthian whose feathers flashed orange with agitation. But you did not destroy the silence. You only hid from it. Now we have 40 species broadcasting signals across hundreds of light years, millions of ships using FTL drives, countless communication networks. If the silence is attracted to such things, we have already drawn their attention. Elder Soren spoke again. The immediate concern is New Prosperity Colony. 3 ships departed there 2 weeks ago. They have not reported back. The colony itself is not responding to communications. We must investigate. Send military vessels, the Croxian representative demanded, a full battle fleet. If the silence has returned, we must be prepared. But Professor Kaelrin shook his head. According to the human records, military force was useless against the silence. Admiral Park's files show that weapons had no effect. If we send warships and the silence is there, we will just be giving them more victims. Then what do you suggest? Elder Soren asked. Send a small team, Hieri said. Scouts, scientists, and humans who understand what the silence is. We evacuate the colony if possible. We gather information. And we prepare for the worst. The council debated for hours. Some species wanted to abandon New Prosperity completely. Others insisted on a military response. A few suggested destroying the colony from orbit just to be safe. Eventually, a compromise was reached. A joint fleet would assemble, led by human vessels using recovered ancient technology that might be less detectable. They would investigate New Prosperity and report back. The preparation took 3 days. In that time, more disturbing information emerged. Other colonies in red zones were also going silent. Not all of them, but enough to establish a pattern. Systems that humanity had flagged as silence encounters were experiencing communication failures. Jiho volunteered for the mission immediately. Hieri did too. Professor Kaelrin, despite his age, insisted on going. Mira and Duvan both joined. The council added military advisors, scientists, and representatives from several species. In total, 23 people would make the journey. Earth sent 2 ships, old vessels built using recovered ancient designs. The FTL drives were different from modern systems, slower but using different quantum mechanics. If the silence tracked standard FTL signatures, these older drives might be less obvious. It was a slim hope, but the only one they had. The fleet jumped to New Prosperity's system together. The journey felt longer than it should have. each person lost in their own thoughts. Jiho sat in the human ship's common area with Yeri and 3 Earth military officers. They did not talk much. What was there to say? When they arrived, the scene was exactly as Admiral Park's logs had described. The colony was intact. Life support was running. Ships sat in their docks. But there was no communication, no response, no movement. Perfect silence. The joint team boarded the colony station carefully, wearing full environmental suits. They moved through corridors that should have been busy with workers, but found only emptiness. The lights were on. The air was breathable. Everything looked normal except for the complete absence of people. They found the colonists in their quarters and workstations, alive, breathing, but not responding. Their eyes were open but saw nothing. They stood or sat exactly where the silence had touched them, frozen in the middle of whatever they had been doing. A miner still held his tools. A cook stood over a stove with food burning. Children sat in a classroom, pencils in hands, staring at nothing. Yeri examined one of the victims, a Veltaran woman who had been writing a message. She is alive, heart beating, lungs breathing, but there is no brain activity, not even basic reflexes. It is like her mind just stopped existing. Professor Kaelrin checked the station's computer systems. The logs show strange data corruption 3 days ago, repeating patterns in the communication systems. Then everything stopped. Whatever the silence is, it came through their networks first. Duvan found something in the station's external sensors, footage from the last hours before the silence fell. He played it for the team. The video showed normal colony operations, then static, then something appearing on the screens, not ships or objects, but patterns. Geometric shapes that hurt to look at, fractals that seem to fold into themselves, colors that should not exist. It is not trying to communicate, Mira said, her voice shaking. It is rewriting information itself. It is changing the patterns of data until nothing coherent remains. And when it touches minds, it does the same thing. It deconstructs consciousness into meaningless noise. Jiho felt sick looking at the patterns. Even through the recording, they made his head hurt. We need to leave, now, and we need to cut all network connections from this station. If the silence spread through their computers, it could spread to our ships. The team retreated quickly, sealing the station behind them. Back on their vessels, the scientists began analyzing what they had found. The conclusion was terrifying. The silence was not a species or a civilization. It was more like a force of nature, something that existed in information space itself. It fed on complex patterns, on consciousness and thought. And every time someone used FTL communication or complex computer networks, they created patterns that attracted it. This explains everything, Yeri said during the briefing. Humanity's first civilization used FTL extensively. 47 colonies, constant communication, complex networks spanning hundreds of light years. We created so much noise in information space that the silence noticed. And when it arrived, it consumed everything we had built. Then Earth went dark, Jiho continued. No FTL, no complex networks, nothing for the silence to follow. So it left, searching for other sources. For 8,000 years, the galaxy was quiet. No spacefaring civilizations to attract attention. But then new species emerged. New civilizations building their own networks. And now the silence is waking up again. Professor Kaelrin looked at the assembled representatives. The question is, what do we do about it? We cannot simply stop using technology. Our civilizations depend on FTL travel and communication networks. An Earth military officer, Commander Lee, spoke up. The old human files mentioned something. Admiral Park's research team theorized that the silence is attracted to certain patterns but not others. They never finished the research, but the data suggests that isolation is key. Self-contained systems with no external connections are safe. The moment you link systems together, you create the patterns the silence follows. The lecture hall floated high above Velthara Prime, a gleaming station where the best minds from across the galaxy came to study. Professor Kaelrin stood before his students, his forearms gesturing dramatically at the holographic display. He had taught xenolinguistics for 300 years, but today felt different. Today he would reveal his greatest discovery. 23 students sat in the curved rows of seats. They came from different worlds, different species, all united by their love of ancient languages. Among them sat Jiho, the only human in the class. He had arrived 6 months ago, still adjusting to life among aliens. His people had only discovered faster-than-light travel 3 years before. Compared to the other species in the room, Humans were newcomers to the stars. Jiho shifted in his seat as Professor Kaelrin dimmed the lights. The other students leaned forward with excitement. Mira and Thal, the Veltheran twins with their silver skin and large black eyes, whispered to each other. Duvan, a massive Croxian whose rocky exterior made him look like a walking boulder, crossed his thick arms. Iris, a small Pelthian with feathers that changed colors with her emotions, practically bounced in her seat. Students, Professor Kaelrin began, his voice deep and resonant. What I am about to show you represents 30 years of research. These artifacts were discovered on a dead world in Sector 7G, a world with no atmosphere, no life, nothing but dust and ruins. The holographic display flickered to life. A large stone tablet appeared, rotating slowly so everyone could see it from all angles. The surface was covered in strange symbols. They looked crude and simple, just angular lines and basic shapes. Some symbols looked like stick figures. Others resembled circles and triangles arranged in patterns. This tablet, the professor continued, is over 10,000 years old. We have dated it using 3 different methods. All confirm the same age. The civilization that created it is long extinct. We have found no trace of them anywhere else in the galaxy. Jiho stared at the symbols. Something about them felt familiar, but he could not place why. He frowned and pulled out his datapad, making notes like the other students. Professor Kaelrin changed the display. More tablets appeared, each covered in similar symbols. We have recovered 47 of these tablets from various locations on the planet's surface. They appear to be territorial markers or perhaps religious texts. Notice the recurring patterns here, here, and here. The professor highlighted certain symbols with a laser pointer. This symbol appears on every tablet. We believe it represents either a deity or a central authority, and this pattern here seems to indicate celestial bodies, possibly a star map or calendar system. For the next 2 hours, the class worked through the symbols. Professor Kaelrin had them compare the markings to every known dead language in the galactic database. Mira suggested connections to the ancient Veltharan script from her homeworld's prehistoric era. Duvan pointed out similarities to Croxian territorial markers. Each theory was examined and discussed. Jiho said nothing. He kept staring at the tablets, that strange feeling of familiarity growing stronger. He zoomed in on certain symbols on his datapad. His heart started beating faster. The symbols are too simple, Iris said, her feathers turning orange with frustration. How can we decipher something with so few unique characters? There are only about 40 distinct symbols across all the tablets. Excellent observation, Professor Kaelrin said. This suggests a basic writing system. Perhaps this civilization was in its early stages of development when they created these markers. Jiho's hand trembled slightly as he enlarged one section of a tablet. No, it could not be. But the more he looked, the more certain he became. The weeks passed quickly. The class met 3 times a week, spending each session analyzing the tablets. They made slow progress. Duvan developed a theory that the symbols represented a mathematical code. Mira thought they might be pictographic, each symbol representing a full concept rather than a sound. Thal suggested they were looking at the writing system backwards. Professor Kaelrin encouraged all theories. He had the students write papers, create presentations, and debate their findings. The tablets became the focus of the entire semester. Other students from different classes would stop by to see the mysterious artifacts and offer their own guesses. Jiho participated in the discussions but said little about his own theories. He spent his free time in the station's library, accessing Earth's historical databases through his personal communicator. He searched through old records, ancient files, anything he could find. What he discovered made his stomach turn. 3 weeks into the semester, Professor Kaelrin presented a breakthrough. I believe I have identified a pattern that confirms these are territorial claims. Look at this sequence here. It appears on 12 different tablets, always in the same position. In every known language, territorial markers include 3 elements: identification of the claimant, description of the territory, and a date or time reference. He highlighted 3 sections of a tablet. I propose this is the claimant identification, this is the territorial description, and this is their dating system. The class murmured with excitement. This was real progress. Even Duvan, who rarely showed emotion, nodded with what might have been approval. Jiho raised his hand. Professor Kaelrin looked surprised. The human had been quiet for weeks. Yes, Jiho? Professor, Jiho said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. Why are you reading my letters? The lecture hall fell completely silent. Every student turned to stare at Jiho. Professor Kael'ren's forearms froze in mid-gesture. I beg your pardon, the professor said. Jiho stood up and walked down the steps toward the holographic display. His legs felt weak, but he forced himself to move. These tablets, Professor. They are not from an extinct civilization. They are from my people. That is impossible, Professor Kael'ren said. These tablets are over 10,000 years old. Your species only achieved spaceflight 3 years ago. I know how it sounds, Jiho said. He reached the display and pointed at the symbols. But I can read this. It says, "To whoever finds this message, we, the people of Earth, third planet from Star Sol, claim this world in the name of exploration and peace. Year 2183, Earth Standard Calendar. Signed Captain Rebecca Choi, United Earth Expeditionary Force." The room exploded. Students shouted questions. Iris's feathers flashed through a dozen colors. Duvan stood up so fast his chair fell over. Mira and Thal started arguing with each other in their native language. Professor Kael'ren held up all four arms for silence. His face had gone pale, his skin shifting from silver to almost white. This must be some kind of mistake. The carbon dating is irrefutable. I do not doubt your dating, Jiho said quietly. I am saying that humans were here 10,000 years ago. We were among the stars long before any of you. He pulled out his datapad and connected it to the classroom display. Images from Earth appeared beside the tablets. Old photographs, museum records, historical documents. And there, in Earth's Museum of Lost Colonies, was a photograph of the exact same tablet that Professor Kael'ren had spent 30 years studying. The professor stared at the evidence, his forearms slowly lowering to his sides. But if this is true, if humans had already achieved spaceflight 10,000 years ago, then where did you go? What happened? And why does the galactic community have no record of your civilization? Jiho looked at his classmates, seeing their shocked faces. That, he said softly, is a very long and very dark story.